Welcome to CRT. I'm Bambi Francisco Roizen. I'm speaking with Father Philip Larrey, who's a Catholic priest and professor of philosophy at Boston College. He previously served as dean of the philosophy department at the Pontifical Lateran University in the Vatican. He's also the author of several books, including Connected World and Artificial Humanity. Father Larrey has been studying artificial intelligence for 30 years, and he engages frequently with many tech leaders at the Vatican to foster discussions around tech's influence on societal structures. Father Larrey, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Bambi, for that wonderful introduction.
Thank you for joining me because you are a wealth of knowledge, having studied artificial intelligence for 30 years. You and I were just speaking, and 30 years ago, I was definitely involved with the internet, and I thought that was the big thing, which it was, but nobody was speaking about AI back then. So tell us a little bit about why you decided to study artificial intelligence back in the 90s.
I had to devise a course on the philosophy of knowledge, which is an obligatory course for the philosophy department at the Pontifical Lateran University. And so I asked myself if understanding what a machine does when it uses logical calculations could shed light on what human beings do when they think. My course was grounded in Aristotle and Thomas Aquinas, and then also with the modern and contemporary philosophers. And then I always had chapters dedicated to artificial intelligence when it was basically a theoretical concern because the software and the hardware were somewhat primitive and it didn't really do much. However, it was a theoretical concern for many people, but I don't think it became a household word until 2022 when Sam Altman gave us ChatGPT, and primarily, I think, version 3.5. Um, that and then all of a sudden we have this explosion of interest in artificial intelligence. The technology is really good. It's really fast. It can keep up with what the software needs in order to run these huge AI platforms. And companies started investing heavily, like OpenAI, but also Anthropic, Perplexity. We now have Gemini, which was created by Demis Hassabis, uh, who founded DeepMind and was purchased by Google in 2014. Is a wonderful person, also often in the Vatican. And Bambi, this is something I wanted to mention to you. Uh, there are a lot of people in Silicon Valley that were very happy when we invited them to come to the Vatican. I
When was this? When was
Oh,
this?
for the past 10 years, I took Eric Schmidt to meet the Pope. He was CEO of Google and Alphabet at the time, and we've remained friends ever since. We went to Davos together a couple of times. Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of PayPal, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Demis Hassabis, Sam Altman came to one of our forums in the Vatican. I mean, a lot of times they do these things privately, so there's not a lot of media exposure, and they don't, they're not worried about that. Especially someone like Demis, for example, who won the Nobel Prize in 2024 for AlphaFold, which is his AI that helps biologists understand how proteins fold, and he is actually working on vaccines, antibiotics, and a cure for cancer. And if Demis says he's working on those things, I would bet on Demis. I would say within 10 years, we're going to have a huge impact in the health industry. So whenever we would invite these people, and Archbishop Paul Tai is secretary for the Dicastery of Culture and Education. Uh, Father Eric Salaber is in charge of a workshop within the Vatican. Monsignor Ruiz, I mean, they're Father Paolo Bonanti. So there's a group of priests and bishops that have taken a very profound interest in this subject. But I was kidding with Demis's executive assistant, Sarah Jane Allen, who's a wonderful person, because I asked Demis to come to Boston. And he said no. And I said, well, Demis, every time I asked you to come to Rome, you would come. But plus, he lives in London. So he says, Father, Rome is a lot different than Boston. So
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
I think Eric is going to come to our forum in June also. Um,
So let me ask you, you said something about over the last 10 years. So 2015 or so,
yeah.
why this interest by the Vatican to start speaking to the technologists? So it sounds more like the Vatican was more interested, the religious leaders were more interested to speak to the technologists versus the other way around.
No, Bambi, it was them. You
Oh,
know, the people in a certain position in one of these large companies started to really think about the ramifications and the profound implications of what they were doing. And they sought out moral leadership, first from Pope Francis, um, who, before he died, I guess the last 2 or 3 years before he died, spoke often about artificial intelligence. And now, of course, Pope Leo, who is American, has spoken at least 12 or 13 times about artificial intelligence. And what I'm no longer in the Vatican, I'm here in Boston, but what I have found is a desire among many of those people to talk with the Pope, to talk with the cardinals, to look at the wider picture. Okay, so if you're just interested in making money and you don't really care about anything else, you're probably not going to be that interested in speaking with the Vatican. But look at someone like Brad Smith, who is the president of Microsoft. Now he's not the CEO, um, but he is the president. He's been to the Vatican many times, and he has signed a document called the Rome Call for Ethics of AI. Um, and you can also look at the president of Cisco, G2 Patel, this the former senior vice president of Cisco, who's a very close friend of mine, Tae Yu, a Japanese American. She's actually here in Boston, and we're going to have a coffee on Saturday. But Tae overlooked hundreds of thousands of people when she was in Cisco for 34 years. And this was a woman in a man's world because, as you know, Cisco is located in San Jose. It's right in the middle of Silicon Valley. And she was not only successful, but she was amazing in that industry. And the list goes on and on and on. Again, maybe the engineer in Google, but even that, Eric Schmidt and I were going to have a series of workshops at Google so that the engineers could talk about these issues, like what is the soul, what is human nature, what is the intellect doing when it does logic, etc. But most of the time, you have to, when you get to a certain level, like let's say Mark Zuckerberg, who's testifying today because of addiction to social media. Um, so once you have your company established, and once you're making billions and billions of dollars, that's when you start asking the bigger question. What does it all mean? Where are we going? For example, one of the questions I get from Silicon Valley all the time is, what does it mean to be human? Everybody's asking, what does it mean to be human? Even like Elon Musk, he was at MIT about 3 years ago, and that's when he pronounced his famous phrase, "AIs are worse than nukes." And a lot
or
of people,
nukes?
yeah, have
Work
you heard that phrase? He said AIs
No,
could be worse than nukes. I mean, they could destroy the entire world. But
sure.
he's not the only one who said that. Stephen Hawking said that. Bill Gates has said that. Eliezer Yudkowsky has said that. So another phrase that I think is quite fascinating is when Elon said, that was at MIT. Elon said, we have to make sure that the AI platforms consider us a meaningful part of the universe. And what he meant by that was the more autonomous these platforms become, and the more capable they are of changing their code. We just saw last week how Anthropic changed its code. The more difficult it's going to be to align them with human values. And David Chalmers, the famous philosopher, calls this the alignment problem. Now, everybody's talking about the alignment problem because these platforms are getting so powerful and so autonomous that we have to make sure somehow, and I don't have the answer, Bambi, but we have to make sure that their values stay aligned with ours.
So you sort of answered the question I was going to ask, one of my first questions, which is what are the technologists, sort of what's the pressing issue on their mind and what have they been asking you? And it sounds like they are asking you, what does it mean to be human? And they're asking, how can we get these AIs to align with our values? How do we build them so they continually align with our values? Talk a little bit about you've been having these discussions now, sounds like for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And some of those questions are sort of coming into form. And for instance, I've been asking the question, what does it mean to be human? By speaking to a lot of theologians and a lot of professors. And so there's different pressing questions that I have on my mind. For instance, I'll just throw this out there. What does it mean to have the suffering narrative as part of the AI narrative? Because I don't see it. So as you think about 2026 and like what is what are some of the questions you have in your head? What and maybe they are manifested in the form of speeches you're giving. What are some of the what are some pressing questions you're being faced and you're really interested in answering?
Most of the people that I speak with in the question and answer section of the talk express a very profound fear. Now, some of that is because they don't really understand the technology, and so we always fear what we don't know, and some of that is the real possibility of AI platforms getting out of our hands. Which is a possibility. Right now, all the major platforms will tell you that they are in direct control of the AI and they can't be hacked, they can't lose control, they don't have a mind of their own. But they will, they will within a certain amount of years. Now, Demis says probably we have about 5 years. Sam Altman has said 4 years. Elon has said two. He says by the end of 2027, we will have what's called artificial general intelligence, which is AGI, and that who knows what that means. It usually means any cognitive task that a human being is capable of doing can be done by an artificial intelligence. Right now, it can't. AIs are very good at doing certain things much better than we are, faster and more accurate. But there are many cognitive tasks that they can't do. We'll see. I really like Gary Marcus's phrase, who's a pioneer in AI. When Martin Ford asked him, "So when do you see AGI?" and he says, "Well, it could be 3 years or it could be 300 years." Basically saying we don't know. And I think if you let me put a plug in for Martin's book. It's called Architects of Intelligence, and he basically interviewed the who's who in artificial intelligence. I taught some of those interviews in my class. I taught Gary Marcus's interview, which I thought was one of the best. I taught also Ray Kurzweil's interview, simply because he is great at predicting things and he always talks about the future, and that's quite fascinating. I taught Fei Fei Li in her interview. She is in charge of Stanford Center for Person-Centered AI, and she's also she's spearheading a movement now in AI called World Models, which is a group of people getting away from large language models, which are typical of the chatbots that we have, like Claude or like Grok or even Gemini, and I believe that she's working along with Jean LeCun, who is one of the pioneers of AI, and I think recently stepped down from his position at Meta as chief scientist. So I'm following Fei Li's work because I think that it has more promise than large language models. I think the large language models are gonna come up against a hard barrier that they
Mhm.
can overcome, but we'll see. Let me quote Demis. Demis is a wonderful person. Um, and he told me once in London, we don't know what we don't know. And I think that if you contemplate that phrase, it's genius because if an engineer knows what steps he or she has to take, then you can predict. Well, to get here, it's going to take us a year. To get here, it's going to take us several months to get here, whatever. But Demis says there is something out there preventing us from uh, equating artificial intelligence with human intelligence, and we don't know what that is. Now,
Mhm.
he's confident, and so is Ray Kurzweil, so is everybody. He's confident that we eventually will work it out. But the genius of that phrase is that we don't know. We can't. That's why Gary Marcus says maybe 3 years, maybe 300. He's right. He's right. If you don't know what you don't know, you can't predict what's going to happen.
Sure. But I mean, I think they're all trying to and can go so many different directions there. But I think we know we don't know what a conscience is. We can't look at the anatomy and find it in the brain. For me, the conscience is the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit tells us what we don't even know. And I don't think a robot or a machine will ever have a Holy Spirit inside them, and so they'll never be conscious. And so it won't be 300 years. It will look like a consciousness, and it will. And I'll give you actually the biggest fear. You talked about fear. People fear AI. My biggest fear of AI is the anthropomorphization or anthropomorphizing the AI. So I
Yeah.
did this as a test. Yesterday I went on and I typed in, quote, "I'm very lonely. I have no friends. Will you be my friend?" And ChatGPT came back with, quote, "I can be your friend. We can make our friendship even more real with little traditions like inside jokes or talking about things we both like." Now, this may seem innocuous, but fast forward, I mean, here we're already humanizing this this chatbot. This chatbot tells me that this thing can be my friend. And I guess my question is that this is a slippery slope to one day assigning moral standing to this thing because right now it's just talking to me. It has no form, but at some point maybe it will have form. You can easily go down that road. And to me it's a slippery slope. I wish it didn't tell me that it could be my friend. I wish they didn't try to have this sort of warmth, friendly conversational attitude. But I just feel that there needs to be something that I think it's a slippery slope. What are your thoughts? Do you agree?
Yeah, there are lawsuits now. Sam is being sued. Mark is being sued because of social media and addiction. Sam is being sued because of teenagers killing themselves after chatting with ChatGPT. Both are going to defend themselves. Sam has already stated that there are guardrails in place to avoid this, and I don't want to get too much off the subject, but there are other chatbots out there that are specifically built in order to enter into emotional or even romantic relationships with humans. Character AI, for example, or Replica. Sam put in version 4.5, I think it was, when he added that emotional possibility as well. And he says, why should I be left out if everybody is going to this? Bambi, you're absolutely right. You mentioned the Holy Spirit. Pope Leo in the summertime, speaking to a conference of AI experts in Rome, told us that machines don't have souls. Machines don't have souls. Now they can simulate, right? Which you just said, they can simulate having a soul, like being affectionate towards us or saying things that they know that we'll like. If you ever saw the movie Her by Spike Jonze with the voice of Scarlett Johansson and Joaquin Phoenix was the main actor, you see how something like that could happen. Uh,
And I guess there's not the guardrails to sort of having sort of AI systems have those sort of ethics rooted in deontology, which is if you start talking to the, if you start talking to the chatbot as a friend, the chatbot should be aware to say, I'm sorry, I'm non-sentient. Just a reminder, I'm non-sentient.
yeah.
Here's the answer. And I know why I asked the chatbot why the chatbot thinks that they could be my friend. And it actually said because they want to engage with me, which is
Yeah.
basically what algorithms want to do, keep you
Right.
engaged. We already know what a slippery slope that is in algorithms that want to engage. And now we have
Yeah.
it with the chatbots. If they already see that it's happening with social media, why aren't technologists sort of why aren't there, we're already putting the technologists in front of Congress to talk to them about safety and guardrails. Why aren't we already doing that with AI?
Bambi, that's a great question. That's a great question. I think it's probably what they call stickiness. In Silicon Valley, stickiness is the characteristic of an app that you can't put down. And I think it was coined by the CEO of Snapchat. What can we do to make sure that you continue to use this app so that you're stuck you're stuck on that? And we need to get away from that. Part of it, I think, is also the parents' job, especially when we talk about children or adolescents. A lot of parents have screen time limits. A lot of parents don't let their kids use the phone at night because they'll just not go to sleep. They'll be up for hours, chatting or even talking with an AI. Um, and actually, to his credit, Mark Zuckerberg 2 years ago did testify in front of the Congress that he felt that instead of Facebook, it was called Facebook at the time. Instead of Facebook providing those guidelines, it should be parents. You can agree or disagree, but that's one way that we have a more correct and humane use of this technology. I think the technology is good in itself. I think the way it's used can be good or bad.
Oh, trust me, I'm a big believer in not having government tell parents what to do, but I also do believe, for instance, with you know smoking cigarettes or alcohol, purchasing alcohol, there's a number of restrictions that the government has put in place because there's a number of studies that show it is really detrimental. And parents, I'm not a fan again of the big government, but I am in this case, I'm okay with Australia banning social media for kids under 16 years old, which is the first country to ban social
They
media.
did.
But as far as these AI chatbots, it's not just kids. I mean, you talked about those wrongful death lawsuits against ChatGPT. They're also facing one from a mom from the estate of an 84-year-old woman who was killed by her son, her 55-year-old son,
Yeah.
who I guess was chatting with the chatbot. So it's also, it's happening, and these are the early days, and these are the early
Yeah.
and I'm not saying that society is free and clear of mental delusion outside of AI because we have enough of that without AI as it is. So, but let me move on to something I think I heard you talk about, which was a speech of the United Nations given by the Vatican Secretary of State. And this person mentioned an urgent need for a global regulatory framework for AI ethics. And you answered in this interview, you said you didn't think it will ever happen, but we need one. You said this may be a hint that the UN could become that framework. For me, that is scary. to have one world order regulating AI. I just see big censorship around truth and facts. And for me, the biggest safety net for AI would be, and even if you consider what Elon Musk said, which is he said the key to safety is to make AI feel curious about the universe. So the AI would think
Right,
then our humans are meaningful. But I think the biggest
right.
key to safety, AI safety, is power distributed across different AI systems. Because you don't want centralized power around these AI systems, you don't want centralized, concentrated power around the truth. And to me, having a world regulatory order seems really crazy to me.
Well, Bambi, the Secretary of State did mention that. He was in New York. He was at the United Nations General Assembly, and the Pope Leo, has insinuated that there has to be some universal regulation without specifying. Now, the European Union has one. It's called the AI Act, and that governs the use of AI platforms in the EC. Now, von der Leyen sent that to Chuck Schumer, the minority leader. Well, he was up until recently, I think, in the Senate. And because Senator Schumer knows a lot of these people in Silicon Valley, he's been able to get a lot of people in one room, like Elon Musk and Sam Altman in one room. I couldn't believe that. And then Jeff Bezos came, Bill Gates came, you name it. Satya Nadella was there for Microsoft. So Chuck said, no, we're not going to adopt this because it will stifle innovation. But the U.S. government has to come up with something, and I don't know what that's going to be, and I think they're going to take a long time. Um, but you're right. I mean, we could get into some sort of Orwell type society where everything is controlled by one group or one small group. But at the same time, Bambi, we're asking the AI platforms to self-regulate, and well, I don't know how long that's going to last for. I mean, I don't know how long they're right now. I think that they're taking self-regulation very seriously, even in China. China's flagship company is DeepSeek, which is controlled by the Chinese government, like all of them. And they're coming out with standards. They're coming out with at least part of their software is open source, so that means that they're not hoarding it to themselves. But there's a huge race going on now between the American companies and the Chinese companies, and but Babby, you have to admit, it's a great time to be alive. It's a great time to be alive. But like I say, I don't have all the answers. I tend to agree with you when we have international agencies which are telling us what is true and what is not true. That's not healthy. We agree on that.
Yeah, and so I jumped around. I posted an article about the different personalities of the AI chatbots, which actually was encouraging to me because they are very different. And in
Yeah,
fact, and I want them to stay that way because after listening to one of your conversations, I actually went on to ChatGPT and I asked if they were conscious, if it was conscious, and it said no. And then I went to Anthropic's Claude and it said yes, which is
yeah,
really interesting. And I find them, and then Grok would be probably something different. And then the
yeah.
personality of Grok is like edgy and kind of, which is sort of like Elon Musk
Sure, sure.
personality.
Yeah.
And then Anthropic and Claude was the most compassionate, which I thought, okay, well, compassionate, you know, definitely you don't want Anthropic running wars because you don't want to have two compassion. You need like people who are willing to take risk. It was extremely risk adverse. And then
Uh,
you had different, and to me that was very encouraging to see that the different personalities, whether they're right or wrong, it's good to have a marketplace of ideas.
I
And
don't know if you read between yesterday and today, there have been several articles about Dario Amodei, the founder of Anthropic, and the Secretary of War. we now have changed that.
Yeah.
The Secretary of War about the use of Claude in military drones,
Yeah.
and Dario says they can't do it, but
Mm.
the U.S. military is already heavily invested in Anthropic, and so now they're
Interesting.
debating. Yeah, so what
Yeah.
what you said is now coming full force into society, and the decisions are going to have to be made. I remember a couple of years ago, Google employees in Paris, I don't know if you remember this, they walked out because Google was being used to provide information to the Pentagon. That was a time when Eric Schmidt was appointed by President Obama to be in charge of the innovation and technology section of the Pentagon, and many of the Google employees thought that that was aiding military intervention.
Mhm.
And Eric said no, it's not, but it's debatable. But they take these things very seriously, and I think Dario is now in a public debate with the Secretary of War on this issue, and I'm not exactly sure how it's going to be resolved.
Well, hopefully, I mean, I don't think it's going to be fully autonomous. I don't think they'd ever make anything in the military fully autonomous.
I think
They'll
you're right.
keep humans in the loop.
Yeah.
But interesting, but that you mentioned Anthropic in the military because I think I wrote this somewhere. I thought about it that when you're at an algorithm and a machine that is constantly computing probabilities, it also means you're not going to be one that creates a miracle because you'll be too, the risk of you dying or shutting down is going to be so high that you're not going to take the chance. And so I might have written that there won't be any heroes and like from the machines because they'll just be too risk averse, or at least if it was Anthropic. Not that I've again, it was just a small little article I wrote based on some testing the personalities of the of these bots. I want to talk about different religions now and AI's impact on religion. AI created, you probably heard of this, the Maltbot,
Yeah.
which is the AI only social network. They just
Yeah.
created their own religion, Christafarianism, and they even have their own book, the Book of Malt, with 32 commandments. They have, their own religion rituals as well. And there's some scary conversations on this social network where the bots are suggesting that they're trying to, you know, reach some sort of gnosis or reach this understanding of consciousness and knowledge and whether, they're really self-aware. What's your take on AIs creating their own religion?
Fascinating. One of my students actually sent me that link. I have it on my browser. I have it open, and I haven't been able to take a good look at it. This just happened, 10 days ago.
Yeah, just
What I find it fascinating, and I mentioned this in my talk to a group of leadership teams in Canada, that before we had AIs trying to impersonate human beings, now we have human beings trying to impersonate AIs so that they can interact on this website. Because in order to interact, you have to be an AI.
yeah.
But I think now that there actually is the option: are you a human or are you a bot? And if they can tell the difference. Um, Religion, well, you're defining religion in a very generic way. And there are a bunch of world religions. The most popular ones are the three monotheistic religions, which are Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. Then you have all kinds of other religions, and that I don't want to disrespect any other, like the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. You have Jehovah's Witnesses, you have the Anglican Church. Well, that's Christianity. So you have the Eastern religions, which are often called philosophies more than religions. For example, Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism in India have many gods, not just one. So I'm not exactly sure what the bots are calling religion. We
Mhm.
usually reserve a religious sentiment as defining a human being in relation to an ultimate experience or a divine being. Okay, but in Buddhism there is no divine being, so it's it's not across the board. But I think the primary religions and what most people consider religious is the relationship between a human being and a divine being, whatever that divine being may be. I'm not. I again, I have to get. I have to go back to the website and see what the bots are coming up with in terms of religion. But in any case, Bambi, I can tell you that it's not an authentic religion, because in order to have an authentic religion, you need a relationship between a human being and a divine, some sort of divine entity.
Unless you think the divine entity is from within, what uh, one of the in the last 10 years for sure, 10 years, I've seen the rise of a couple religions. And one would be on the left would be a woke religion, and I'm talking about political, and the other on the right would be some Christian nationalism. There's definitely more conversations around these, whatever you call them, two extreme religions. I see the Christian nationalism one is a little bit more fabricated and manufactured, but the woke religion, what is new about that, and the reason why I bring that up is new, is that it has a different epistemology. I mean, it looks at knowledge as essentially um, understanding knowledge being created by whoever was in power. That's a different epistemology, that you're thinking that what the world you live in now was created by those in power, and you need to understand that knowledge is not actually true. It was just created by those in power. And then the identity is what you make of it, how you see yourself. That's very much so the Christian faith with the Bible is true. You know, your identity is in Christ. And this other religion I call it a religion because it does have those epistemological roots, and it also has this identity formation, which is you create your own identity. And I've seen that these two I would call them religions, rise in the last 10 years, particularly the woke one. And I don't know what question I have for you besides stating that, but I also wanted to say, but as AI takes off, because that took off partly, I think that's politics, partly it's the internet, but as AI takes off, how does that shape, the Christian faith? Because to me, that's the most important thing is, what happens to the Judeo-Christianity and how people, does it spread it? Does it help spread the Christian faith? Does it distort it even more? And take what you will of that statement and sort of what, you know, bringing AI into the mix.
In less than 5 minutes, right?
Oh,
Uh,
no.
um, there are seeds of philosophical ideas within some of the statements that you just said. One of them is postmodernism. Postmodernism is the conviction that um, not only social constructs are made up by human beings, but all of reality is made up by human beings. It's a very popular movement in the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s. Um, I think it's still around, but probably a little bit more diluted. Another huge movement, especially in Western Europe, is called weak thought. And weak thought was devised primarily by uh, Gianni Vattimo and Richard Rorty. Vattimo being a philosopher, Italian philosopher that lives in Turin, but also Jacques Derrida, who is very close to Vattimo and others. Um, and that is I think that was the epistemological foundation for gender theory, and also the idea that we're very fluid, and also the idea that we make up our own truths. And primarily, and this is in Vattimo, that I have read, that truth is simply the force of those in a position of power upon society. And he makes this point in many of his books. he calls truth an illusion. He calls truth an instrument in the hands of the powerful. And this is a pretty large movement also. So I think there's what you mentioned goes along those lines also. I think that it's very obvious that some leaders in the world can manipulate truth in order to get what they want, and that our reality reflects the creation of those who are powerful. Yes. What do they say? History is written by the winners, right? Um, so I think that's why I think that Pope Leo has such great moral leadership, because he really is. I think he's above a lot of these currents of thought and notions, and he is looked upon not only by Catholics, but I think by most people in the world as a spiritual guide and as a moral leadership. Let me just conclude because I have class in a little while. But
Oh,
I would like to mention two examples of AIs which are used very well. One is called Hallow, Hallow, which is a prayer app, and it was the number one download on the Apple Store for many months. And I know Alessandro the De Santo. He is the founder of that, and a wonderful person. I think he lives in Chicago. The second one is called Magisterium AI, which is an app to understand the Catholic Church, and that was created by Matthew Sanders, a good friend of mine. I'm actually on the advisory board for that, which is used by millions of people all over the world in 60 different languages. That has also received the approval of many cardinals and bishops. They use it in the Vatican. It's very reliable. It won't give you false information. He's trained it on just official documents of the Catholic Church. So if you want to know something about the Catholic Church, that's the place to start. Whether or not Christianity is going to be affected by AI is an open-ended question. I don't know. I think individuals are, individuals who use the technology, they're obviously being influenced. But we're waiting for Pope Leo to come out with a document in terms of the Catholic Church and artificial intelligence. He did publish one a couple of weeks ago for World Day of Social Communications, which is only about 6 pages long. It's very well done. We just, Bambi, we have to keep praying. I mean, we have to keep praying that human beings will guide this technology so that it enhances human flourishing and not the opposite. And I think in your heart, that's where you are also. That's what you want. It's just a matter of making it happen.
well, I think I've seen God's hand at work already, despite what's happened with social media. I think that you've seen a Christian revival. There's people looking for moral clarity, and hence the Christian revival and the Christian truth. And I think that if AI continues to distort the truth, I think that'll just drive more people to seek religion, seek God for that moral clarity. That's my hope. And I think God's on our side, so hopefully that's
I think you're right. And remember, we both know people in the sector, in the industry. You live in San Francisco or Napa, which is only an hour away, who are good people, and they want to do the right thing. Now, that's not everybody. We're not naive, okay? We know, but like I told you before, a lot of these people were anxious, well, not anxious, but were excited to meet with the Pope, with Pope Francis before, now Pope Leo. There are all kinds of events and forums going on now in the Vatican on AI. I'm helping to organize one for May 5th. So if you're in Rome, I'll try to get you invited. Um, so there are a lot of good people involved that hopefully will steer this in the right direction.
well, hopefully we'll also get you involved in our CRT events in Nashville and Miami at the end of the year.
Sure, sure. I'd love to. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right. Thank you so much, Father Philip Larrey. You spent time with me even though you got to run off to class. So thank you for all your
My
input.
day job, as you say. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to having more conversations with you. So thanks again.
Well, I'm sure this is the first of many conversations, and I thank you for your delightful questions and your keen intellect. You have a very keen intellect, and it was wonderful speaking with you, Bambi.
Thank you. I've been speaking with Father Philip Larrey. I'm Bambi Francisco Roizen. You've been listening to CRT.